Hi, I'm Dick Telford, and I'm a physiologist and a coach, and an old one at that, and you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to episode 342 of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by Polar's stunning new generation running watches, the Polar Pacer and the Polar Pacer Pro, and Pogo Physio's online telehealth consultations. I'm Brad Beer, sports and exercise physiotherapist by trade and training, and founder of Pogo Physio. Each week, we'll bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. We do this across a range of our different episodes: interest editions, coaches' corners, expert editions, featured performers, and learnings catch-up episodes. And off the back of last week's special episode, our first live audience show featuring dual marathon Commonwealth Games champion 2014 and 18, Michael Shelley, we felt it was only fitting to hear from his coach, Australian distance coaching legend Dick Telford, on this REWIRED episode. Now, this Coach's Corner episode was featured back on episode 119, and it's been one of the very popular Coach's Corners from our archives. Dick Telford was the first sports scientist appointed by the Australian Institute of Sport. Dick has also worked alongside the Australian swim team and the Australian canoeing team in the capacity as an exercise physiologist. Dick left the AIS Physiology Department to take up distance run coaching with the AIS track and field team. It was from there that Dick would go on to achieve some incredible achievements with his athletes. Dick was appointed the Australian Athletics distance running coach in both the 1992 and 1996 Olympic Games, coaching Lisa Ondieki to the silver medal in the women's marathon of the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games, Australia's only Olympic marathon medal to date. In recent times, Dick has been the coach of Bonita Willis, Australian marathon national record holder and former world cross-country champion, Michael Shelley, dual Commonwealth Games marathon champion, and Lisa Weightman, multi-Commonwealth Games marathon medalist. There's a lot in this episode. Dick is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to the physiology and coaching of distance running. So get your pen and paper ready. Here is this REWIRED episode with Dick Telford, Australian distance running coach. Dick Telford, this is an absolute pleasure for me. I have been an admirer of your work professionally since I was a young teenage triathlete, eating Sustain cereal in the hope that that would produce the performances that you were producing out of the AIS as the role of head physiologist. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Brad.
Dick, your career is very wide. It's very illustrious. You have achieved many things. You're a humble gentleman. As per the bio, you've worked in elite sports at the highest levels in your capacity as a coach, as a physiologist. You were the AIS's first appointed exercise physiologist. What would you say, though, Dick, out of all things you've achieved in your professional working career, stand as the greatest moments or joys for you?
Yeah, that's a big one, Brad. When you talk about things that stand out, it's a lot of years that I can flash back to now, even right back to days where I ran onto the Collingwood football ground as a young footballer, as a 17-year-old from school, playing in front of the final practice game of about 20,000 people, and never having played more than, in front of more than probably half a dozen people and a few dogs. I can go right back there, then to days where I worked with the Victorian cricket team as their coaching coordinator when Frank Tyson handed me the job looking after the Sheffield Shield team, and we won a couple of Sheffield Shields over those next couple of years. Then I suppose Don Talbot, the director of the Institute of Sport coming down out of the blue down to Melbourne to listen to me give a speech at Deakin University, where he just offered me the job of guiding sports science in Australia right from scratch at the AIS, right on the spot. And then I suppose, all of the years through the time where we went from winning 4 medals in Montreal, then opening up the Institute of Sport right through to a time where we won around 54 in 96 and 2000 in Sydney. And, they were fantastic years where physiology, biomechanics, sports psychology, motor learning, sports medicine, physiotherapy, linking it all in together, produced the goods at the AIS, and that was copied all around Australia with the Institutes of Sport in each state, which was a highly significant factor in those increased 50 medals. Then you could go on. Well, I'm leaving out a lot of things, but finally to my own coaching career, where I've accumulated probably more medals in Commonwealth Games and Olympics, and I think, as someone told me, any other distance coach or any that Australia's had in previously. So I can go back to all those medals and the performances that people have put in over the years, and the time that I first paired up with Robert De Castella as the first person I employed at the Institute of Sport. And he, with his coach Pac Lahesi coming up later, he became world champion within a couple of years of coming to Canberra, which was phenomenal. So there's so many things, Brad. And then I could go on to the last 10 years where the research I'm doing with young kids, looking at how important physical education and physical activity is in the physical and psychological development and cognitive development of young children. That's a fascinating area, and most recently I'm going to be doing a lot of work up there with you and up there around Brisbane and Gold Coast, working in early childcare centres, and we're opening up a new big project in a couple of weeks' time, as a matter of fact, in early childcare centres around Gold Coast and Brisbane. So a lot of things. So sorry to have gone on for so long about that.
Dick, no need to apologise. They are really just very brief bullet points on what is an incredible career. And even obviously the Gold Coast you just mentioned, we've just come off the back of the 2018 Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, and obviously you coached Michael Shelley there to defending his title in the men's marathon, and Lisa Weightman to that sterling silver medal performance in the marathon. So though that day must have been quite special, the Gold Coast Marathon, the Commonwealth Games recently, for you being there on the sidelines to embrace both Michael and Lisa at the end.
Well, that's fantastic. And somebody the other day asked me about my memories of, what sticks in my mind. And I sort of went right back through 2 times with Andrew Lloyd winning a gold medal at Auckland, and, with him not being really impressing the selectors enough to want to have him in the side, yet he won that gold medal. But more recently, they're the things, of course, that will always be indelible. The way that Lisa Weightman and Michael Shelley, having coached those people for a long time. In fact, Michael I've coached for, I think he said the other day, I coached him for 15 years. That's a long time. So that sort of experience makes coaching absolutely worthwhile as any coach, and you would know. And
they are both such humble champions as well. They're incredible people. Dick, you're running yourself, before we get practical on some physiological coaching type topics, you were a very handy marathoner. You clocked a PB of 2:27 in the Melbourne Marathon. I think you started that in 1978. You went 3:12, and then you followed up within 5 marathons to run that 2:27. So quite clearly you were a talented runner. You also, I believe, won a medal in the World Masters Games on the track, and had the uncanny exit from your running days, your career sort of competitive running days, of running your best times on the way out on the track. I think in the 8, the 1500, 5 and 10. Tell us a little bit about your own running, Dick.
Yeah, well, I must admit I do have a chuckle about that last statistic, that the very last events I have run from 800, 1500, 3K, 5K, 10K, half marathon and marathon. The very last races I ran were all my PBs. And I always say to my athletes, you're never going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to emulate your coach's performance there. But the reason is that they're all better athletes than me while they're young, and they're producing all these top performances while they're young. And as they get older, there's no way known they're going to be able to get quicker like I did. And because I didn't start running until I was probably 32 or 33 after I'd finished coaching football and cricket and playing football and cricket, and I had that head start. But then, the old cunning physiology coach comes into play when I sort of work up the best ways to train, knowing I can improve each year in a particular event as I get older, but understanding that there comes a time where I reckon I've done just about as much as I'm ever going to be able to do, and that means, yes, I'll run that PB, never run that race again. So that's the way I've gone. It's a nice little record to have under my belt to talk to the young athletes about.
It's a brilliant story. I mean, you got down to 158 for the 800, 357 for the 15, 109 for the half. So you're no slouch. You're still running now, Dick. What do you love about running?
Oh, well, nowadays it's I never ever. Because of football and squash and things like that, my limiting factor has definitely been my hips. But basically now, and hammering them around. But basically now, I know I just can't run quickly, where you're bounding along and using all the forces that you know much more about than what I do. So what I do is I generally just get out and thoroughly enjoy myself. For example, this morning. Was very brisk in Canberra, as it often is. We're 2,000 feet up in the air and the snow's not too far away. And I just ran at the back of my place, which is not far from Parliament House. I ran up a place called Red Hill to the top of Trig Point of Red Hill, up a fairly steep dirt road where there's a lot of kangaroos and a lot of parrots of all descriptions. And you can look across Parliament House and across Canberra and you see the cloud down below you. And I only ran for 40 minutes. And I wouldn't even call it running. I'd call it jogging. But the fact is I'm sort of running up a hill. There's no real stress. It might be a little bit of stress on the lungs, even though I don't puff that much running up that hill. So it's just thoroughly enjoyable now to get me feeling good for the rest of the day. That's the way I do it.
Well, you really do practice what you preach. Dick, changing gears here, through your coaching, physiology, extensive knowledge you developed over the decades, what would Dick Telford say are the top 3 characteristics required for optimal athletic performance? I have heard you reference before this concept of a big engine and a smooth engine, so I'm presuming that might come into one of these top 3 characteristics.
You prompted me well there, Brad. There's just so many things that contribute to good athletic performance in all sorts of sports, and of course they vary according to the particular sport we're talking about. But if we stick to a basic sport like running, you're right. Runners are going to be limited by the capacity of their engine. And we often, particularly their aerobic engine, and we often talk about VO2 max, which is an indirect way of measuring the capacity of the engine, because we can measure the amount of oxygen that someone can actually utilise, and that's proportional to the size of their engine. So that's one way. But then the other aspect that contributes to a very good runner is that when they're cruising along at any given speed, whether it be a speed of at a 1,500 metre race or a 5K race or a marathon race, they actually use less energy than somebody who is not as well equipped in that way. So, in other words, this efficiency thing is particularly important. And using less energy means that with a bigger engine and a smoother engine, then when the time comes, for example, in a 1,500 metre race and the bell's rung and you've got one lap to go, generally that particular person with either of those characteristics or or hopefully both, is going to feel a lot better, going to have a lot less instability, if you like, or change in their system and their biochemistry. We call it homeostasis. Their homeostasis is more close to what it was when they started. They're feeling better and they can come home faster. They're the better runners. So the physiology, and there's a couple of points, is very, very important. But then we've got the psychology and the biomechanics. You know, it's no point in having, or if we're just sticking to running, I've had plenty of runners that have had super engines and great efficient engines, but they haven't had the anatomy, the chassis that's going to carry them through to be able to train. No matter how good people are, they've got to be able to train and push the envelope there if they want to get to international level. And if they haven't got the body to do that, then that's difficult. You know, the likes of Michael Shelley, for example, Rob Di Castella, Steve Monteghetti, those sorts of people. More recently, the likes of Jess Trengrove and Lisa Weightman, although for a while there, before I coached Lisa Weightman, she had a lot of stress fractures. But once we work out what's going on, and I did that with people like yourself, sports medicine people that understand how to work with the body, with me as a physiologist and a coach. Lisa has had a really good run over the last 6 years, and just in her, just to verify that, for her to run 2 hours 25 and 15 seconds at the age of just on 39 and run a PB, well, actually, she's one that's I've got to watch, because she's running a PB as she gets older as well. So I have to put an end to that. She might break my record.
No, that's brilliant. And Dick, so, the physiology, the psychology, the biomechanics there, and I know it's a very difficult question, so thank you for giving a consolidated, response on that. And I love that concept, big engine, smooth engine. Dick, first-time marathoners, it can be a Pandora's box. What would be your top tips for first-time marathoners, just broadly speaking?
Well, it's probably similar to what I'd be saying to some of my top marathoners. Really, you've just got to run within the limits that you've got. And most of the time, there's no point if you're in an important race, and most marathons are pretty important races where you're running your first one, your third one, you're running the Gold Coast Marathon, or you're running the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games Marathon or the Olympics. They're all important because you have to build up for months before these things, and everybody, no matter who they are, will get a bit toey and nervous about putting their foot in the line and knowing they've got to try and get through 42.195k as well as they possibly can, even though there's really only a handful of people know they're running it in some circumstances, let alone others that have got the whole world looking at them. So you've got to run within your limits, Brad, and that means that you set yourself those limits based on what your coach or yourself has come up with in terms of saying, well, this is reasonable. I think this pace is reasonable. That if I go over this pace, I'm going to be using too much glycogen per kilometre. I'm going to run out of glycogen at the end, which is a big limiting factor, running out of fuel in a marathon. And I'm going to possibly hit that wall and have to walk or struggle to get the last few K. And we see top marathoners doing that. E.G. Hawkins in the last Commonwealth Games marathon, but lots of runners that just run out of fuel. And as I've probably mentioned before, you can have that Ferrari engine, but the Ferrari engine runs out of fuel. It's worth nothing, and that's what happens at the end of a marathon. And marathoners have got to know their limits and run according to those limits.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, Dick. Talking about fueling marathons, fueling endurance performance. Contemporaries of yours, such as Tim Noakes, etc. There's been that big sort of emergence, if you like, of the ketogenic type diets, low carb, high fat. What's Dick Telford's views around some of this more recent view around changing fuel sources?
I haven't taken any notice of it. I haven't even read about it, to be honest.
You've been too busy.
Well, not really. You just use basic physiology. Now, over the years, I've seen people come up with all sorts of diets. I haven't changed my mind since I did nutrition and biochemistry at Melbourne University, in the early days down there. I haven't changed at all. You look at what the nutrients do, what they're the amount of oxygen they need to generate a certain amount of ATP. And there are differences between carbohydrates and fats and all of those sorts of things. You understand, where you can get the best power from, where you can get the best type of efficiency from in terms of utilising oxygen, that sort of efficiency. And it comes down to the fact that when athletes train, no matter what diet they're on, even if they're on a pure carbohydrate diet, they're going to learn to use more fats at any given level of running, even though they don't eat any fats, because you just convert carbohydrate to fat anyway, in the body. That's easily done. Not easily to go the other way around, to convert fats to carbohydrates. So anyone would be silly to try and embark on a marathon program or a program that involves elite level sport, trying to work on a high fat diet. I've never heard of anything so silly in all my life. I mean, that'd be the way you'd nobble a runner if you wanted to try on that. And despite the fact that you will adapt more to a high fat diet as you go, you're never ever going to be able to run as well on the high fat diet as you are on a mixed diet, where you've got sufficient carbohydrates to fuel where you want to fuel that anaerobic component of your energy.
Yeah, look, interesting view, big topic, interesting views, but very practical, right? Common sense prevails. Dick, you've spoken about the cloud of fatigue, removing the cloud of fatigue from runners. Can you just touch on that for a moment? What do you mean by that sort of phrase? You must remove the cloud of fatigue from your runners before an event.
I think I might have first mentioned this cloud of fatigue when I was working with Bill Sweetnam and at the Institute of Sport, and later on with Laurie Lawrence and other swim coaches around the place. But with Bill, we worked on a lot with learning how best to taper swimmers. Some swimmers would go into a big event and after training really well for months and not swim anywhere near their best, and until perhaps later on where they had a bit more rest and suddenly found they swum better when it was all over. They'd lost their place in the Australian team or what it happened to be. So we learnt by trial and error a little bit. And all I mean by this one of the things I used to talk about with swim coaches originally when I was the physiologist there with the swim team, and with Pac Lahisi and the likes of Rob De Castella and all those others that were great runners at the Institute of Sport. It was a case of your fitness you build up gradually week by week by week by week, and you're building up the fitness, but at the same time you're building up this fitness. You often got this little cloud of fatigue that's hovering around there. You can get rid of it sometimes and get good sessions out, and it comes back again. But you're always, particularly for the long distance runners, running a little bit tired. And a lot of the times the marathoners who are running 200K plus a week, they've got that cloud of fatigue over them. So when the time comes to taper over the last 2 to 3 weeks before a marathon, you can continue on doing some good sessions, but you can remove a lot of the volume around that, not all of it, but a lot of the volume around that, and the type of sessions to remove the cloud of fatigue and let the fitness, which has been improving all the way through and hasn't changed much, but the performance is a thing that changes dramatically when the cloud of fatigue is removed on top of that fitness, if you like, and the performance comes through. And as a coach and as a physiologist, I thought one of the most important things that I had to contribute towards the athletes I was working with was learning how to get the best performance out of an athlete at the right time. And that's critical, of course, for championship events.
You're listening to Dick Telford, Australian distance running coach, exercise physiologist, sharing around insights from his incredible career to date. Support for today's show comes from Polar. What Polar does helps to improve the health, fitness and quality of millions of lives around the world. This is what drives them. But what is driving you? If you are interested in the next step in your fitness and health tracking, do take a moment to check out our friends at polar.com. If you're looking for the latest in running watches, they have the all-new Polar Pacer range, the Polar Pacer Pro and the Polar Pacer. If it's multi-sport you're after, then it's the Vantage V2. Or if you're getting off the beaten track and need a premium outdoor GPS watch, look no further than the stunning and tough GridX Pro watches. However, if you want to get the most out of your training and racing, take a beat to grab the gold standard in heart rate monitors, the Polar H10 strap. Or for an even more flexible heart rate monitor, the Verity Sense, which also tracks your heart rate for swim-in. Polar's product range starts at $129, but what's most important is that whatever you are doing, do it with heart, polar.com. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio's online telehealth consultations. If you are a runner or endurance athlete struggling with bone, tendon or joint-related concerns, then Pogo Physio's online 45-minute consultations can be the ideal vehicle to help get you back to your physical best. Join hundreds of endurance athletes worldwide in getting back to their best. Jump over to pogophysio.com.au/telehealth and there you can schedule your consultation with myself or any of the Pogo Physio team. For now, let's jump back with this week's Rewired episode. Dick Telford, Australian distance running coach, sports scientist and Australian Sports Hall of Fame inductee.
So, Dick, you mentioned there the cloud of fatigue, removing the cloud of fatigue. If someone's preparing for their first marathon and they're not sure on how to remove the cloud of fatigue, any sort of tips you'd give them? I certainly find in my work as a physiotherapist that in my own running with marathons and halves, I think I've always taken to the start line still under a cloud of fatigue because I'm just too scared to pull back on the miles and then feel the weight gain, which is obviously some of that carbo loading, that glycogen being stored up. So what advice would you give to people about to tackle their first marathon with regards to removing that cloud of fatigue?
That really does come down to an individual thing, Brad. No question about that. If you've got someone that's running 210 kilometres a week, and then you've got another runner that's running 80 kilometres a week but it's doing one long run, there's that cloud of fatigue obviously is very, very different. So it could be, for example, that a runner that's just running 80 kilometres a week and doing a long run of 25k on Sunday wouldn't have to change their training at all. They just, all they'd have to do is run exactly the way they run right up to the Sunday before with their long run of 25k, and then just have an easy week. Do everything by half. If you normally do a session, as a lot of runners do on the Tuesday and the Thursday, do half the session on the Tuesday. If you're used to doing 6 or 7 Ks on a Tuesday, for example, you might just do 3 Ks. You wouldn't want to do nothing though. You don't want to just jog around for the week. You don't want all the systems to start running down. You're not going to hurt yourself running three times 1K if you're used to doing 6K every Tuesday. You just wouldn't do it flat out. What you want to do is you want to touch up that motor and remind it that it's going to have something to work at in a few days' time, but you don't want to give it complete rest either. One of the things I never do with my athletes is give them a whole lot of days of just jogging around. You just mentioned it before that your muscles will start to feel a little bit sluggish. You'll feel a bit sluggish because when you do put on glycogen into your muscles, you store it with a certain amount of water, and you will feel a bit sluggish. And often a marathon runner might feel a little bit better after they've run 5 or 10k into their race rather than right at the end. People have to understand those things and run accordingly.
Yeah, so there's a lot to it. I mean, Dick, if we're looking at, say, something like recovery in training, what would you say are the things that we could be aware of with recovery in terms of from sessions? What are some of the key things that help athletes get ready for the next session that you've discovered over your career to date?
I think recovery comes from getting fitter and for the particular event. There's no question about that. Michael Shelley, for example, recovers a lot more rapidly from anything he does now than what he did 5 years ago. And we'd be doing similar training sessions, but he'd recover a lot more rapidly from those training sessions, so that now he can actually do more in training. Now, we haven't seen that transpose into his faster marathon, and that's a goal that Michael and I have got, to get him into a sub-10 marathon shape. But he certainly does put it together when it's count. He's a great championship runner, a great competitor. We were wanting to get him up into those top few Australians have run sub 2:10, which is not a super run these days when people are running 2:4 and 2:5. But the sub 2:10 does put him into that special class, and I'd like to see him there as well as being legendary now in terms of his championship running.
Yeah, absolutely. Dick, this on the taper, I should have asked there, how late would you leave the last hard session? You said you don't want to jog around all week, but you've got a marathon on a Sunday. What's the latest that you'd go out and fire up that neuromuscular system with a little bit of an effort?
A bit of an effort on what we normally do. It'll vary according to athletes as well, but we would normally have an aerobic stimulus session on Tuesday. We would certainly do some race pace work on during other days, including Thursday and sometimes Friday before a Sunday marathon, and even when they're going for a jog, I like people to feel as though they're doing their neuromuscular systems being utilised at the rate it's going to be utilised during the race, even if it's just doing some strides of 30-second or 1 minute efforts at race pace, which for a marathoner at race pace is not difficult at all. You could do that as part of your warm up, and which we do, and it's not going to utilise any of that glycogen we talked about as being so important. So a good warm up and some little bit of race pace work is important, and it can prove to be beneficial in the long run, because being warmed up, you're more likely to be able to reduce the proportion of glycogen to fat that you are using in the early parts of the race. So you don't want to go into a race and suddenly having to run quickly off the mark with a whole bunch of other people sprinting out like, cut cats. That's not the way you should be doing it. You should be well warmed up and going out at a steady pace and gradually getting to over, a few hundred metres, getting into your race pace, and you should be there well warmed up.
To save the glycogen stores for as late in the race as possible.
Yeah, well, it is possible. Yeah, that's true, Brad, because it is possible that if, for example, you are very nervous and one thing where that would increase production of lactate, for example, and production and utilisation of glycogen. If you're nervous and then go out too hard, you could waste a lot of that glycogen early. You could pay the penalty later on and not get that PB you're after.
Dick, in terms of volume reduction, say for a taper, what was, say, Lisa Weightman and Michael Shelley's? How did their volumes reduce just before their success at the Com Games here on the Gold Coast?
Well, again, that'll vary, because we always work individually. That'll vary even for them. I would change that, and depending on how they feel, from one race to another. So there's no sort of magic number that I say, we're going to do, 60K, 80K, 100K, 120K. It's not like that. But what I do talk to them about is how they feel and how they're recovering, what their legs feel like, what their head feels like, and what they're doing. Because a runner, when you get really fit, can go out and jog for a long time and use very little glycogen and still feel good. And they've got to have their metabolism ticking along. They've got to get they don't want to suddenly change everything that changes their whole metabolism and, their way of life. We want to keep things as normal as possible, but to still store the glycogen. So it might come down to, they might be running, easy run, a couple of easy runs on an easy day. Say on the Wednesday before a marathon, they might run an easy 10K in the morning, an easy 8K at night. It's 18K. It might sound a lot, but if you're jogging it, it's nothing for these people. But for someone that's a 3-hour 30 marathoner that's not doing that many miles, that'll be too much. And I would say, don't run twice a day. Go out and do, if you've done a little bit of a spike session, as I call it, on the Tuesday, where you're spiking up the aerobic system, just letting it know it's being used, you might go out and on the Wednesday and go for an easy 8K run. That's it for the day. So it all depends on the run out there, Brad.
Dick, pacing strategies. In your mind, what's the best way to pace a marathon? Like looking at a negative split or an even split, or 1% either way?
In order to run as fast as you can.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to say that running evenly all the way is, in theory, I don't know the answer to that question, Brad, but you'd have to say that in theory, the less number of times you change your pace, the more likely you are to conserve your energy. So the worst you could do would be to go out and run a marathon and say, right, I'm going to go out this marathon, I'm going to run the first K solid, the second K easy, the third K solid, the next K easy, and so on. That'd be the worst scenario. So the best scenario, as I see it, is getting out there on that pace, that race pace, that you feel comfortable with. And from your experience, you know roughly what you say if you run a marathon in 3 hours 30 and you're trying to run now at 3 hours 20, then 3 hours 30 pace, you'll go out at 3 hours 30 pace and gradually ease it up into a 3 hours 20 pace and see how you feel. If you start puffing too much, you know you're using more glycogen. The more you puff, the more glycogen you're using. Simple straight line graph on that one. So athletes have got to feel pretty good for the first 30K their race to prepare themselves for the last 12.195K.
Yeah, brilliant. Keeping it simple. Dick, the zone, get in flow state. You know, I ask all athlete guests of the show this, you know, to describe the zone. You've got your own experience as a 2:27 marathon runner yourself and a World Masters medalist on the track. And then you've got your athletes' experiences. But to you as a physiologist, as a distance coach, to you, what's the concept of the zone mean? Like, what does it look like? You know, what do you think's happening physiologically to a runner when they do get in that sweet spot?
Yeah, I don't ever think about zones, and those. I understand what is meant by getting into a zone. I can see it when I watch footballers play and cricketers and tennis players. That you can get into a zone where you're right on top of your opponent. You know, as a tennis player, for example, then things change around. You've just won the first set 6-1. A couple of things go wrong, and then you start doing things that you weren't doing in the first set, and you lose it all, and you lose the second set 1-6. And that happens. It happens to the very best of players. They're in the zone for one bit of the time and they're not in the zone for the next. And they've got to find a way to get back into it. But with my runners, I don't think about that. I just think about them being in the zone all the time and just getting prepared for the performance where they really want to run well, to be working towards that performance so that. One of my runners was asking me the other day, can I run this race, next weekend? And so, sure, you can run this race next weekend, and that's fine. But it's not going to be the fastest half marathon you've ever run. You're going to be running your fastest half marathon in 2 years' time. But you can run well there, but don't ever think this is going to be the best one you ever run. But get out and run it the best you can now, but it's only a start. And, I think it's... the Sydney half marathon this next weekend. I've got a few people going up there, so they're in that sort of boat. But they're in a good enough zone to run well. When they're in a good enough zone to run at the very best they've ever been, that'll be a time where I think they've trained for long enough and well enough to have reached very, very close to their maximum potential. But, I'm often guessing at that. And, you have a good guess at it sometimes. But I just don't think anyone ever reaches that line where you've got to your very, very best. Lisa Weightman, she's 39 now. She ran before the Commonwealth Games at London, she ran a PB, 2:25, and 2:25.15 I think it was. And my immediate reaction to that is, oh, gee, what are we going to do now to get her under 2:25? And she might be getting on towards 40. Well, what the hell? She's run at 30. She's run at 39. She can run 2:24 at the age of 40. Why not? She can get in the zone, and Lisa gets in the zone pretty well, and so does Michael, and so do the other top runners. If we call it a zone, I just don't refer it to a zone. I just prefer it to being well prepared and confident in what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely brilliant, Dick. The role of strength training. Anything you'd add on all your years of wisdom in how that helps an athlete prepare, or obviously there's an injury minimisation side of it, but in terms of performance, is there anything that you specifically would highlight in that field or that area?
Only that, all other things being equal, if an athlete is stronger and can develop more power in a contraction of a large muscle group like your legs and backside, then you're likely to be a better runner in one way or another. But the problem is, can you do all that strength work and train as well in the other aspects of your characterisation of fitness for your particular race. So it's all going to be a balance. I can't just go to my athletes and say, right, we're all going to do this strength work, and we're going to be doing these weights on Monday and Wednesday and Friday, and we're going to train Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday morning and Sunday, and you're going to train twice a day running. And I mean, there's a limit to what human beings can do. So we've got to balance it out. But I do feel that strength work becomes more and more important the lesser the distance that you are competing over. Incredibly important for 100-metre sprinters, not as important for marathoners. When I say that, I'm talking about traditional strength work. But the strength work we would give our marathoners would be technique work running up hills. That's good strength work. You're lifting your body weight against gravity, which you're not going to be doing in a marathon race, except in every stride where you're jumping up and down and putting the next foot, your left foot down, then your right foot down, your system of little parabolas. But basically, what we're doing with the strength work of a distance runner might be more, squat jumps and some upper body work for the running muscles and the arms and so on. But it's low key stuff compared to what the sprinters would be doing in the gym, where they're developing high power work. And I'd say that's just crucial for sprinters, but not for the middle distance and the distance runners. But the middle distance runners, Brad, would be somewhere in between. They've got to be strong. They've got to be able to run fast. There's no question that a 1,500-metre runner worth his salt's got to be a very, very fast 200-metre runner. So they've got to do the strength work.
Yeah,
got to do it.
It's fascinating. I mean, running up hills, Dick. So therefore, I guess if you're looking to run your best distance event, say a half marathon, you'd want to be doing some hill running there.
Oh, yeah. I think variety in running is incredibly important, not just for, variety of terrain, variety of shoes, variety of the hills and the flat, as well as the surfaces. That's what I meant by terrain before. Running on grass a lot, staying off hard tracks with spikes, very dangerous running on hard tracks with spikes. That to me is probably the greatest threat to a runner's career that I ever come across. And I think that running up hills is a very, very good way to develop that power without running as fast as what you would be running on the flat. And by running slower, I think it does a lot to increase the variety of running and therefore reduce the chance of being injured.
And just to be clear, Dick, do you mean hill repeats at effort or like a long run rolling over, rolling hills?
I don't see a lot of difference.
Okay.
Some people say they go for an easy long, I might have heard minor and these people like Deke and say, just go for an easy long run on Sunday. I don't know the way Deke used to run, and I would imagine mine would be something similar when he went out the Fernie Creek with Deke up here in Stromlo.
Yeah.
I used to tag behind him for long enough for part of his runs. I'd never try and go with him. But when you're running up a hill and he reckons he's taking it easy, that's not what I think's taking it easy. So a long, easy run, when people like these champions describe a long, easy run, is a series of very hard hills often, very hard hills with some easy parts in between.
Dick, we're coming to the end of our time. Acclimatisation, I mean, getting ready for a race like, the heat of the Gold Coast marathon recently for the Com Games. You mentioned Lisa living in Melbourne, Michael on the Gold Coast. Is it just a matter of trying to spend more time in the environment you're going to race in, whether it's, hot conditions or cooler conditions? Any tips there physiologically or from a coaching point of view?
A lot of championship marathons are in warm conditions because they're held in the summer, and they're the ones people normally avoid if you're a marathon runner. If you want to run your fastest marathon, you're not going to run in temperatures above 17 degrees because you're just going to overheat, and when you overheat, you're going to use, as we talked about before, you're going to use more glycogen, and you're going to run out of that fuel tank's going to sort of get down towards the red line level a lot earlier if you're running in warm and particularly humid conditions. So the best way to train for a championship marathon is train in the conditions that you're going to be working in, and that includes humidity, which is different than just heat. So that's crucial. So with Michael, he had it made because he was living on the Gold Coast. Perfect. And a few times he unfortunately couldn't train as well as what he could have. and had to abort some training sessions because it was just too hot, too humid. So that's a disadvantage. But Lisa, she was training in Melbourne. Melbourne gets pretty warm, and it's not far from the sea. It's reasonably humid. She was training in pretty good conditions. When it was colder, I would get her to train in parts of the day where she could. I know she has to balance out family life and work life and so on. But where she could, to put more clothes on, create that sort of microclimate around her body and train in the warmest parts of the day if Melbourne weather wasn't as good. So it's a case of just doing everything you possibly can to maximise the effects of training for running in championship races. And if we don't maximise everything or we leave things to chance, well, there's a big chance that those runners aren't going to run as well. And we never leave things to chance as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Dick, we've got one, this is time for one listener question here, and that's come from Lauren. And Lauren asks, assuming you've got an okay base behind you, what's the best way to progress as a middle distance runner in the winter season versus the summer season? So I guess it's a question of, yearly cycles.
Well, I think in the days of Sir Roger Bannister, he would have said that the only work you do is fast work, and you work on the track and you run your 12 400s and try and run them in 60 seconds because you've got to run a 4-minute mile. That's one way to look at it. But nowadays it's not. It's horses for courses and depends on the athlete. I would train two 1,500-metre runners differently. I think in my squad now I've got 4 or 5 runners that have run the either 4-minute mile or the equivalent thereof. So in other words, they've run 3:42 for a 1,500 metres down to 3:37 high. But they're all sub 4 minutes. But they would all train differently. And you can see on the track that they can't all train the same. They can't do the same speed. Some need more rest, or if they're going to run the same speed, they won't do it for the next repetition. So it's all different. But in a nutshell, we would do a lot more aerobic work to develop the aerobic system and the power of that aerobic system to develop their max VO2 and their efficiency and so on. Just like you would for a 5 and 10K runner, we would do that over the winter. All the coaches would know that you build up what we call a base, but I would probably be more inclined now, and I'm hoping it'll bear some fruit with the likes of Jordan Gussman and those sort of people. Jordan, as I speak, is over in America now, about to run a race tomorrow in California. But he's pretty fit at the moment, and I'm hoping that his aerobic base will come to the fore so that he can run the fastest 1,500 he's ever run in his life tomorrow.
Go Jordan. Dick, last 2 questions. What do you think the greatest myth of distance running training is? The greatest myth?
Greatest myth? I don't know if it's a myth anymore, but you obviously... A lot of runners in the past, and I'm talking about even 30 years ago, some of the top runners, Derek Clayton, these sort of people, thought that the more you could do, the better it's going to, the faster you're going to run. Now, I don't know if I'd call that a myth, because if you could adapt to that more work, then there's probably some truth in it. And Derek Clayton got to run 2:08, I think he ran 2:8:33 and that was incredible, 1968 or something like that. He did that by doing things like going out for 450k runs hard and then running 275k a week or thereabouts, or stories where he put a little pebble in his shoe to run with a bit more pain than what he normally would. If we're going to talk about a myth, then I think it's a myth that having to do those extraordinary things to push yourselves past the limit is something that we might have thought once upon a time was going to work, but we now know that all that's going to do is lead to the biomechanical breakdown of the body and a short career.
So more is not always better, but certainly there still needs to be some kilometres on the clock, right?
Enough, but what is enough? Some runners can. Enough is more than enough is different too for different runners. Some runners can run 220k and run it really well with quality. Other runners can only do 150k, 140k, and still be at their best for running a marathon. But some 1,500 metre runners might run 150k during the winter. Others will run 100k and still be at their best. So it just depends on what the physiology is like and how that person is likely to respond, and that only comes with experience with a coach.
Dick, this is probably going to be an impossible question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you could boil down everything you've learnt in your incredible career, physiology, sports science, coaching, your own athletic endeavours, to one bit of advice to people listening in to pursue their physical best performance, what's Dick Telford's solitary piece of advice, the most important pearl of wisdom, going to be?
Oh yeah, that is a difficult one. It's difficult for me because my piece of advice, if I'm ever asked for it, would vary depending on who I'm talking to. So the individuality of the way I see each athlete is critical to me. But in terms of health, my advice is that no matter what age you are, whether you're 1 year old, and then those people aren't going to be listening too carefully to what I'm saying, but up into 80, 90 to 100 years old, physical activity itself and using your muscles is vital to the way that your physiology actually operates. Vital to your biochemistry, vital to the way you can control your blood glucose and your ability to think and move. So keeping physically active is one piece of advice that I would give everybody, irrespective of their athletic endeavours. To the athletes, the only advice that I can think right offhand now that might be more universal would never limit yourself as to what you think you can do, because I reckon when you do limit yourself, you'll find that there's a way to go past that limit. So what you thought was a limit wasn't in the first place. You can always improve. There's always a way to improve your running, for example. We're talking about it, that we can think about this in any terms of in any sport, but there's always a way to improve. It's just that you've got to think about those things, and thinking about the way to improve is part of the beauty of human performance, and that's part of the reason that I coach. I just love thinking about things and finding out ways to do things better.
Brilliant. Dick, it brought up the question. I must ask you, I'd be disappointed myself if I didn't. It's a current age of biofeedback data. It's never been easier for athletes and coaches, for that matter, to have data at our fingertips. Where's the line between too much data, not enough data, and running by feel, for example? What's your sort of thoughts around that in the modern era of technology?
I think the data's fine, but like understanding and being able to map, again, I could talk about lots of different sports, but if we just stick to the running, understanding, what your reps were and comparing that with somebody else that and all those things, they all add up to maintaining interest and motivation. And I applaud those things. I don't take as much notice of those things as what my athletes do. I don't really care what another athlete's doing that I don't coach. I only care because I want that athlete, if he's an Australian athlete or someone I know, I want them to run well. But it's not going to, if it's not going to affect my coaching, well, that I don't get too much involved. I've got other things to think about. But I think in this era where we can get feedback from measuring lactates and measuring heart rates, looking at the times and the terrains and the elevations and all those sorts of things, I think it makes things more systematic. And when we become more systematic, it allows us to think about it more and we can improve more. So the more feedback we can get, the more information we can get, to me, adds to the fun of it. It just adds to the fun of it. I'd love to know what an athlete's max VO2 is and what their running economy is, for example. Now, I know those two things aren't the be-all, end-all in a runner because there's a lot of other factors involved. But just knowing those two things gives me a clue as to how that athlete might respond best, or whether they're going to respond to altitude training, or whether they're going to respond to an altitude tent. Those are the sort of things, and how they respond. That sort of feedback, to me, adds to the interest of everything and just gives you little clues as to how to improve that athlete, which is, after all, what us coaches are on about the whole time.
Brilliant. Dick, I ask everyone where I can a personality question. If Dick Telford could have 3 people at a dinner table, living or past, a fun one here, who is at Dick Telford's table and why?
Oh, gee. Oh, goodness me. Well, I'd certainly like to, I'd love to hear what, like top coaches and top runners. I'll talk internationally. There's a lot of people in Australia that have been fantastic. But yeah, I'd like to go back in time and sit down with Percy Ceredy, for example. He'd probably be 120 now, I don't know. But I met him briefly when I was playing some AFL games, and he came across and gave us a talk, and I thought he was a crazy man then, but I know he's not just a crazy man. And the way Herb Elliott talks about his coach, Percy Ceredy, he'd be a great person to talk to. I've had the pleasure of sitting next to John Landy and also with people like Herb Elliott. Clearly, the locals like Rob De Castella, champions. I'd sit down with dinner with those people anytime. Sitting down with John Landy and talking with him about his training when we're both on a board down in Melbourne for a place called the Blue Earth Institute, looking after health of kids. I just found talking to John Landy as just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Roger Bannister came across and had a chat with me in my office at one stage at the institute here in Canberra. He died a while back, unfortunately, we know that. But what a man to be able to talk to him, not just about his running, but about his work in the neuromuscular, the neural area, his work as a clinician that he studied at Oxford University. There are a few examples. I've stuck to running because that's the theme of what we're talking about. But I could name a hell of a lot of others. Mo Farah. I had the opportunity to sit down with him over in, as I mentioned before, over in Flag. What a fantastic person to talk to. Alberto Salazar, again, with his experience, and he's such, he's got himself in a couple of predicaments with what he does, I suppose, but he's a very creative and a likeable, terrific fellow to talk to, Alberto. Just delightful fellow, and he does his very, very best as a coach. I admire him as well. There are a few names that I banded around, but my colleagues here in Australia, the likes of Pat Clohessy and Chris Wardlaw and these sorts of people, Steve Monaghetti's, they're just fantastic people to talk to.
Dick, that's brilliant. Lastly, the physical challenge for the week from Dick Telford to listeners. What's Dick Telford's physical challenge going to be to listeners?
Well, I don't know whether people can do this because people work and they can't do what I can arrange to do because I can work, at midnight, or I can work at 6 o'clock. I can work at the university. I can work in the library. But I like to try and do something that gives me a bit of physical activity twice a day. Now, that I'm not a fit person anymore in terms of fitness, but in terms of health fitness, I am. And I just feel I'm missing out on something if I don't do two bits of really good physical activity a day. It might be cycling to work, for example. I don't cycle to work, but I go for a run. But it might be cycling to work. That'd be one. Another one would be going for a run with my runners. Well, other people wouldn't have the opportunity to do that, but it might be going for a run out in the bush or just close by. Or Canberra's a big bush city. I can do that anyway and scare a few kangaroos and parakeets, So twice a day, doing something that's like brisk walking or better. Going out for a walk is fantastic for most people. It doesn't really satisfy me. I just like to jog along, but that's just me. And doing that twice a day, it might be going shopping once, parking a car a little bit further away, and then doing something at night with the kids. But twice a day, doing something that's brisk walking for at least half an hour or so, that's the challenge that I would give people, and they would definitely live, in my opinion, humble opinion, a much more productive and higher quality life. And probably longer life as well.
Dick, you mentioned the word humble. You are a humble gentleman. I think that's very clear and evident. Your career stands alone as really one of Australia's great sporting contributors and successful careers as well in what you've done. So you are an Australian icon, and the 2017 ACT Senior Citizen of the Year there for the Australian of the Year Awards. So Dick Telford, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to share with myself and listeners today.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Brad, and I look forward to catching up in the near future.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show, and I trust and I know you enjoyed Dick Telford's share-ins. He really is an icon of Australian distance running. Now, if you happen to miss our recent live stream featuring Rory Darkins, positive sports psychology researcher and mental skills coach, it is now available over at physicalperformanceshow.com for post-live stream access. This wonderful learning opportunity focused on the mental skills of athletes is accessible for $49, which includes PDF copies of the presentation. So jump over to physicalperformanceshow.com. Now, if you'd like to support production of the show, you can do so by becoming a patron of the show. Just jump over to physicalperformanceshow.com or over to Patreon and search The Physical Performance Show, and there you can pledge your support from just $5 per month, and in return we'll grant you complimentary access to our entire back catalogue of live streams, including Dr. Stephen Seiler, who has shared 2 excellent live streams with us, Dr. Shona Halson, Rinny McGregor, esteemed sports dietitian, and now Rory Darkins exploring wellbeing and mental skills. So jump over to physicalperformanceshow.com or over to Patreon and search The Physical Performance Show. If you have feedback regarding the show, how we can improve, you can find me over on social at Brad_beer or drop me an email, b.beer@pogophysio.com.au. Speaking of the socials, you can find us now on YouTube and consider a podsy that's a screenshot of the episode that you've been enjoying and tagging in the show at Physical Performance Show. We will reshare those. They are always a whole lot of fun to see them coming through. Now, coming up on the Physical Performance Show, we'll explore rheumatology in sport, an often unspoken and unexplored topic that affects many athletes. So until next week, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.